Taste, you gotta stop talking crap about me. They can hear you now.
Sorry.
You know that Mike Blair's head,
It's just
Mike
like
Blair's hair is a
talking
mess.
crap.
We're just testing the power of the microphone, like.
Hey, counselor, how you doing?
Is that, are you like controlling that up there?
Yes, so this is the controls and then this is.
Can
in
we
case
add
of
the participants on the
emergencies.
side so we can see who's here?
Yes.
That'd be awesome, thank you. Perfect.
All right, let me turn the chat off for a minute because so far it's just Mike letting us know we were muted. You can see almost everybody.
This is one you would make.
Yeah.
Are waiting on anyone else to get a quorum. I don't know if I, is Mayor Venice or Mayor Van Gordon up there?
Not yet.
I know you sent this to me, who's on our exec committee.
Yeah, we just need one more person.
Okay.
Who are the participants, the actual voting members of the exec? The two mayors
Yeah, the two mayors and then Chris.
and then the two of us.
And three of us.
Yes,
And
yes,
Matthias, of course, yeah.
yes.
Okay, well, let's. Trying to see if we can get going and then just wait on any voting items, which is really what we need the forum for, right?
Correct.
Can I call to order?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and call to order and hope, cross our fingers, that we have either Mayor Venice, Mayor Van Gordon, or Chris hop on to make quorum so we can hopefully do the business that we need to do here. But we'll go ahead and call to order, and Matthias, Pat, Brittany, we're all here, so I'm not gonna do a full around the room of attendance check. But I would like to do a land acknowledgement. Lake County is located on Kalapuya Ili, the traditional indigenous homeland of the Kalapuya people. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, the Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed from the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. Today, Kalapuya descendants are primarily citizens of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians, and they continue to make important contributions to their communities, to Oregon, to the world, specifically to our community, and we just want to thank them for their contributions and acknowledge our role. All right, consent agenda, we'll have to wait for approval. Let's do jurisdictional, well, Pat, why don't we have you kick off jurisdictional updates?
All right.
And then I can do my brief update. And then if we snag anyone from Eugene or Springfield, we'll allow them to do that too.
And I don't have an outline for jurisdictional updates. I think some of the things that we're interested in this particular forum is the navigation center, which is operating, of course, on River Avenue. And I think we're at about 75% occupancy right now.
Actually 89%.
89% right now, good. And I visited personally, went there a couple of weeks ago, had a nice tour of the facility. And you know, it's exactly what you'd expect of the navigation center, low barrier shelter. There are people in there with different levels of needs. And I'm not qualified to particularly comment on that because I'm not a professional, but I believe that from my impressions, staff is doing a superb job of meeting the needs as well as they can as we evolve the operation of the navigation center. The stabilization center is in process. We have a steering committee that's working on siting, and that steering committee its role, I believe, will be expanded in the not too distant future. For the time being, there's no site been announced for it yet. And I think we're still looking at the spring of maybe 2024 if all things go well for opening of the adult stabilization center. And then Regarding the Board of County Commissioners, we have a new board. 2 new members were sworn in in January, and the best part to report is that they have appointed me to the Poverty and Homelessness Board for another year. That's about it.
We agree. That's a good part. Wonderful. Counselor Fleck, do you have an update you'd like to give?
Sorry, find my mouse there. Nothing really. The only thing, when we opened the full-time shelter, we were uncertain whether we'd need warming services or not. As it turns out, we did. So our agency, Community Sharing, is partnering with Beds for Freezing Nights to reestablish congregate warming nights. We also will be active Thursday, tonight and tomorrow night, most likely, and Sunday. So that's kind of the only update. I think our population of unhoused is kind of stabilized a little bit, although there remain some challenges at our one overflow site. That's kind of it for us.
Wonderful, thank you.
And since I can't see everyone, it's, oh yeah, let me scroll again and see.
Either mayor hopped on.
I see Chris is online.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Chris is on.
And then
Wonderful.
Patrick and Aaron are here from Springfield and Eugene, so they may want to share something.
Okay, yeah. Any updates from Springfield? Anything that staff want to share?
Sorry, this is Erin. I don't actually, sorry about the dog. I don't have anything specific. I think we're just sort of in sort of getting geared after break again to get back into sort of city council meetings, and I'm sure next month we'll have more to report.
Wonderful, thank you. I see Peter on there. Anything from the city of Eugene?
Not a ton. I can say that we're pretty optimistic that we'll get Chase Commons finally open in mid-February. So that will add 20 shelter beds to our alternative shelter program, and we're looking at folks who have a higher degree of medical support, need a higher degree of medical support than our standard shelters. So not a medically fragile site, but folks who do have a higher level of medical need. And then other than that, our emergency manager has convened folks from across the organization to start figuring out potential options related to the governor's emergency order. And we'd like to be able to respond agilely to whatever details come out around that. So those are the updates from Eugene.
Wonderful. I know Mayor Venice, and I don't know, Commissioner Farr, if you had conversations, was meeting with some of the mayors across the state last week to find out more. Is there any indication of timing from the governor's order, or when our community might know any next steps?
I'm hearing nothing at this point. I've been in touch with Alex. I'm sorry, Kate, you may have. I was in touch with Alex Kyler this morning. He had nothing to report.
Okay.
But
And what I can share is that at this point, the Office of Emergency Management at the state level is leading the coordination efforts, and held a meeting last week that resulted in numerous questions with very few answers, and that they were going to respond back with answers as soon as they could, both from the emergency management side and also from Oregon Housing and Community Services. And so we have much to learn. And from the county side, we are, of course, waiting to learn kind of how we're going to be able to support additional efforts, whether it's financially or just through tangible resources like additional, tents or pallet shelters. But we will be convening shelter providers as well as our partner jurisdictions in the next few weeks, just to have conversations about where the interest lies and what might be possible depending on the level of resources that are available. So we'll be in touch with when that meeting might be available to attend, and then certainly we'll reach out with further coordination once more is known.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. And just context for those who are listening in case you're unaware, the governor declared a state of emergency related to homelessness on her first day in office. And so there's just a lot of unknowns of what exactly that looks like for communities across the state. So thank you. I can do a brief update on the workforce group that has sort of combined from the Poverty and Homelessness Board workforce group and our business leaders task force at the Eugene Chamber had created a workforce group as well. And we combined those two groups to really try to push forward those efforts together. We had a great check-in yesterday and kind of got back up to speed and laid out a map for what the next year will look like. The big highlight is thanks to a grant from the Lane County Community Health Council and Lane Workforce Partnership. We have some seed funding to push forward initiatives to create 75 to 100 transitional job opportunities for unhoused individuals in 2023. So that's our ultimate goal. We're working with the shelter providers to identify individuals who are able and willing, who are looking for those transitional work opportunities, which we're kind of defining as employment that is not jumping all the way back in 40 hours a week, right? 5 days a week. So 2 to 3 hours a day, 2 to 3 days a week to really try to accommodate what we heard were some of the barriers from the unhoused folks that we met with and talked to. So we're working with the shelter providers to identify and make sure that they have access to training for the folks in their shelters that will help with some of the soft skills and kind of getting folks the confidence they need to sort of move into those types of roles. Working with employment service providers, the county, Goodwill, Easter Seals, et cetera, to really make sure that we are connecting folks with those services and streamlining the experience for the unhoused individual. And then working with the employers to develop more of these transitional work opportunities within current employers in the community. And then the other kind of category of work that or job opportunities we're looking at is a handful of pilot projects that would be creating something new. So either day worker programs, we're talking about landscaping, we're talking about just different opportunities in the community that could accommodate a variety of different interests from unhoused individuals in the shelters that we have here. So that work's moving forward and we're pretty excited to see where it goes. Okay.
Sure. Just one thing I forgot to mention, at our next Tuesday board meeting in the afternoon session, we'll be receiving our quarterly a housing update. And Kate Budd will be presenting that along with Daniel Batista. And it's live and you can watch it live. It's going to start at about around 2 o'clock based on the agenda, but that session begins at 1:30. Should be really good. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. We do have a few chat comments. I don't know if you want to take those now or later. I'm sorry that it's so small. Let me shrink the participants.
Okay. Yeah, we can maybe jump into questions or comments at the end. Okay, yeah, cool. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna go back up to the consent agenda now that Chris is here and we do have quorum. So can I get a motion to approve the minutes from November 2017 Executive Committee and accept December 22 statement of financial dashboard?
So moved.
Second? Yes, second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I think Mayor Van Gordon might be here also.
Oh, good. All right, any opposed? Any abstentions? Wonderful. Okay. So one thing that we talked a little bit about maybe trying to do just slightly different this year is at the beginning of each of these meetings, really trying to ground ourselves in the data and the information that we have as a community around the homelessness crisis that we're looking at, some of the metrics that we find on our Tableau report. Oftentimes, you know, those are getting updated by the county and a lot of our providers are putting information into it. But I think making sure that we're all sort of keeping our eye on the North Star here of reducing the number of individuals in our community who are finding themselves unhoused. And so I think it's important for us to actually keep those numbers front of mind. So it sounds like Carly, or no, yeah, Carly is going to give an update on that.
Yeah. Diana, can you share that one slide I sent you? And then after that, I'll take control to show the other part. We're doing this from multiple rooms in the same building, so it's going well. So I asked Diana to put up a slide that we actually show at new user orientation for HMIS, because I think it's really helpful to understand sort of how our system works. So here on this orange box, this is really how a client moves through our projects in HMIS. They might have multiple enrollments, but this is how this always works. And like half of the people on this meeting are users, so I know they've heard this from me before. A client gets enrolled in a project, and that's when agencies will fill out some information about that person, like their demographics, their AMI, their homelessness status, whether they're housed and unhoused and exactly where. And then after that process has been done, that's when they record service transactions and other things depending on the program model. And then when they're no longer working with that person, we exit them from the program. So this is like how the traditional HMIS workflow works. That's how David's program works at the Navigation Center. When we get to projects that are a little bit non-traditional for HMIS, like our service centers and our food pantries, we really appreciate them participating, and it's just unrealistic for agencies to do this for 3,000 people all of the time. And so the way that works is the first time you see someone in the fiscal year, you create this entry, you update their income information, you update their housing status, and then just record those meals or those socks and showers and meal services throughout the year. At the end of the fiscal year, we exit those individuals. So then when the new fiscal year starts, just the first time you see that person again, they come back. So what that means when we talk about the by name list, and I wanted to focus on this section at the bottom. This is our monthly count of folks who are homeless, and we pull this directly from HMIS. Someone is counted if they have that enrollment, that first section on the left, and if they've gotten a service in the last 90 days. But what happens at the end of June is we exit everybody from those large inflow projects, and we start to catch them back up in July and August and September. So if someone was served in June, but we didn't see them in July, they won't be included in this count. Even though we saw them maybe 90 days before, they don't have that current enrollment, and so they get dropped off of our list. So you can see it takes us 3 months to pick those folks back up, about those 90 days. And that's just because not everyone comes in that first month and gets that intake again. And so that's why it looks like we have this miraculous drop every July, but really it's just a function of how we try to collect stuff and try to get as much information as we can from providers who are just kind of overwhelmed by that number. I did kind of also want to put on your radar that our numbers are updated for December. So that's what's visible here. I just realized I'm not sharing my screen, and I'm really sorry to everyone who's on the Zoom because this is maybe not helpful. Let me try this again. So for the screen sharing here, that I've just been talking about this section here at the bottom where you see this drop in our numbers on Tableau. Just also wanted to put on your radar that this is our highest count ever, was in December, for a number of people homeless during the month. And last year was the first year we ever surpassed a number of 10,000 people homeless in a year. So that happened in 2022, right at the end of the year.
Mention jurisdiction breakout.
Yes, we had someone very helpfully send an email to us saying, hey, I'd love some Florence data, and we realized that wasn't easy to find. So up in this top right corner here, you'll see a current jurisdiction filter. Right now, we're limited to just a few options, and that's just the large areas that we serve. I don't want to filter something down to a population of 2 people where it's quite obvious who those folks are, depending on their race and ethnicity and gender. Right now, we offer this for Cottage Grove, for Eugene, for Florence, and for Springfield/Glenwood and other Lane County. When folks are enrolled in a project, we ask them where are you currently living? So you can see in the year, we saw 150 people total outside of Lane County or unknown out of our 10,088. And this is at the time that they were interviewed where they currently were residing. So everyone who doesn't fall into this Cottage Grove, Eugene, Florence, or Springfield is grouped into this other Lane County category.
I have a question on that. On Eugene, does that include the unincorporated area inside of the urban growth boundary in Santa Clara?
That is a great question. I live in unincorporated Lane County, Springfield, and I totally thought I lived in Springfield the entire time.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people have that experience.
Mhm.
So really, we don't ask for an address, we ask where you're currently residing. And I would assume that those people just say they live in Eugene.
Okay, so we do poll inside the urban growth boundary then. Okay, good.
Mhm.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Because it's the unhoused individual that indicates where they're from. So it's kind
Yeah.
of what their assumption or understanding of that is.
I
Okay.
totally thought I lived in Springfield until it came time for taxes, and that was a surprise to me. So I think that's a pretty common experience.
It looks like Chris has a question.
Oh, sure.
Thank you. Is there a way to figure out, like with this active 90 days, is there a way to figure out how many of those overlap? Because how many of our disabled homeless are also homeless veterans or chronically homeless veterans?
Yeah, so we do have the chronically homeless veteran category here. But we have been working for a while with the amazing folks who help us do this Tableau dashboard. I'm not going to take credit for this at all. And they are helping us apply some more filters to this so that it will be easier to see that information. So right now that, we have some numbers that we think people would like, but I think what would be even better is if we had multiple filters up here so you could really narrow and kind of play with the numbers and see how those change. So we're in the process of doing that. From what I understand, it's a bit complicated. And so we're working with someone who's helping us through it.
Yeah, point of clarity, if I may.
Mhm.
I'm just trying to figure out while I'm looking at these numbers right now, how much of how much of an overlap is there like with the disabled, or like, is there people who are in both categories, and like, is it actually a lower number without it separated out?
Yeah. So I can talk through this top left number here, and then I think maybe next month we could take the rest of this first page on. So for example, in December, 3,600 people essentially had come through HMIS and received a service from us within the last 90 days. And the place they had been sleeping was somewhere that was counted them as literally homeless. Of those 3,600 folks, almost 2,000 said they had a disabling condition. Of those 3,600, over 1,400 met the definition for chronic homelessness, which I can share, but it's a little bit complicated. So we just get at that by a few questions. 196 of this 3,600 were veterans, and 104 were chronically homeless and veterans.
So in theory, someone who is chronically homeless could also identify as disabled homeless.
Mhm.
So those two could overlap, but they never overlap with that number of active. That's sort of the baseline.
Yes, this is
denominator,
our total number.
Okay.
And this sort of like year to date, I'm looking at Eugene right now, so let me bring it back to all. This year to date is what we call an unduplicated number. So each client in HMIS has a name and a date of birth and all of that. We saw over 10,000 distinct individuals say they were homeless in our county.
Wonderful. Well, I think that right there is the North Star that I was talking about, and really making sure that, that the effort that we're all putting in as a community is creating some impact on hopefully reducing that number. So appreciate that.
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
You probably mentioned this already, but you're actually looking live on Lane County's website. That's the projection that you have right there.
Yes.
It's the same one I have on my screen here.
Yeah,
So-
that is something I could have shown. Every time I look for these numbers, I just search for homelessness in Lane County. And there's a little Carry It Forward's website actually comes up first. But the second result is the Lane County website. And when you click on this page and it scrolls for a minute, this will actually link you to all of our Tableau dashboards. So clicking on homelessness in Lane County will take you to our main page and shows all of the public data we have available right now.
And you say you don't take credit for that, but I'm going to give you credit for it because this is a really wonderful website. website. It really is easy to
Mhm.
negotiate.
Totally.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks goes, I think, to many people, all the providers who put information in, and we have Lane County staff who just work on making this dashboard look great.
Yeah.
So,
Wonderful. Thank you, Carly.
Mhm.
So we'll move on to our next item on the agenda here, which is the HUD Continuum of Care Audit. And it looks like Kate and Dana are on point for that.
Yes, thank you. So in June or July of this past year, HUD representatives virtually sought to learn more about how key components of our overall continuum of care award are meeting all of the different HUD rules and regulations. And what you have in front of you is a summary of that monitoring visit. And I remember years ago, a supervisor that I had mentioned to me that when HUD does a monitoring, it is really their role to find something that is wrong with the programs, just so that, and this supervisor said, just so that they're earning their money. And you know, while you know, that may be true, I think that the opportunity is really to help us improve our programming overall, and to make sure that, you know, the rules and regulations which exist for very legitimate reasons are being followed. So first and foremost, thank you to the staff, both within Lane County and within the programs that were monitored, for their participation and for really bending over backwards in a short period of time to get the documentation to HUD in a virtual manner. The programs that were very much focused on were Cascades, which is through Shelter Care, and they provide a rapid rehousing program. Sahaley, which is also through Shelter Care and is a permanent supported housing program. And then the Homeless Management Information System, which of course is under Carly's purview. And there are many rules and regulations related to HMIS that need to be followed. And so after the monitoring, HUD then looks through everything and then reports back to the county what concerns or findings that they might have. And a finding is something where it's just very clear that the rules are not being followed. Concerns are where there might be challenges in the future should something not be changed. And so we had 3 findings, which in my experience is you know, very few. To be honest, I've seen as many as 12 to 15 in different communities. And the overall findings included just concern around the document of disability for one participant. That documentation is extremely important related to the permanent supported housing programs. Because in order to qualify for permanent supported housing program, you need to be chronically homeless, which of course a part of that definition includes someone having a disabling condition. And so the opportunity for resolution that Shelter Care provided is that they're going to be more clear in communicating the requirements that their staff need to follow when welcoming someone new into the program, and updated their procedures. The second finding was related to leasing requirements, and that there was a missing lease and a missing rent reasonableness documentation. And both of these are requirements of, you know, entering into a HUD-funded program. Rent reasonableness is a form that basically helps you know, a program understand is the rental unit that someone's going into reasonably priced as far as the rent goes for the overall kind of community environment. And so you actually have to go and find 3 other rentals that are around the same price that the HUD client would be renting. And so that is something that needs to be filled out. And so again, shelter care revised their policies to make sure that it is well known from the very beginning what their staff need to do when welcoming someone new into the program. And that their risk management team will review that documentation as well to make sure that it's correct. Thirdly, there was a concern that the recipient had not developed a procedure and template for issuing a management decision. And so this is basically targeted to Lane County. And that if we receive any type of feedback from HUD regarding our subrecipient, so in this case, shelter care, we need to make sure that we provide a formal management letter to shelter care saying, hey, we need you to do these things. And so we now have a more formal procedure that starts moving forward as soon as we receive any type of letter from HUD. And so what is great about these findings is that they are things that can be addressed and that we would expect would not be a concern moving forward. And just again, want to share my appreciation to shelter care for all their work. I did invite Dana Peterson-Crabb from Shelter Care to come and share just a little bit more about what they're doing to address these findings. Dana, anything you'd like to add?
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate these. I mean, like, we're audited so many things on so many different levels, like financially, HUD. So, but this one, we've been struggling with maintaining staffing, and so some of this has been kind of a direct result of a lot of turnover. We had the items that were missing from files. It was directly related to some staffing issues that we were having at the time. Those have been corrected. We revamped. We noticed, like, through that process that some things were missed. So we revamped our onboarding process and have a lot more detail in, if you're a manager, this is the things that 30, 60, 90-day plan for what you should be able to accomplish in those first 30, 60, 90 days. And we also, I think you had mentioned this, is that we went back and rewrote our policy for intakes and specifically prior to paying rent on any given unit. These are the items that you have to have in place. We also had a new checklist internally for making sure that property management and our housing staff are talking to each other and making sure that we're getting copies where we need to. And we are looking really good for the rest of the year, especially we had some concerns about particularly Cascade is just being able to, like, move folks in as fast as they can. Right now, there's just 2 staff, like, working on all of our short-term, like, every shelter bed at our 969 location is run by 2 people, in addition to the Fuse Rapid Rehousing and Cascade Rapid Rehousing, and increasing those numbers. So, like, despite being, like, having extremely high caseloads, they're doing a great job of, like, just moving people in. So while we're struggling with that staffing issue, I think for the most part, like, I was really happy to see that we only had those few things as findings, because it could have been a whole lot worse.
Thanks, Dana. Appreciate the efforts around revising the policy procedures and just making sure that staff are well trained. Thanks to Amanda for sending out this information to all of our continuum of care programs because their policies and procedures were not scrutinized in the way that shelter cares were, and they too could have some of these challenges. And so we want to make sure that all of our programs are learning from this exercise to make sure that should they be monitored by HUD, the same challenges are not coming up. Any questions about the process or the results of this HUD audit?
Sure. I should have said this earlier, just as a precaution, I have a disclosure. I am on the board of directors for shelter care. So I'm declaring a potential conflict of interest based on legal input that I have. There's no actual conflict of interest, so I will continue to participate in this discussion.
I just logged on so I could see the chat, but it doesn't show me anything that happened before. Were there any other questions?
Yes, I can show, there are just a couple questions about Tableau, and then Chris was asking if this information could get sent, which I think might have been in the meeting packet.
Yeah, this wasn't in the meeting packet, so I'm glad to send this as a follow-up.
Wait, which piece wasn't in the meeting?
The monitoring summary.
Oh, the summary. Okay. Any other questions or comments on that? Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you and appreciate staff here and with shelter care and the other orgs, because anything that has audit in the name, there's a lot of anxiety around that. Wonderful. Okay, so we are going to have an update on the 2023 point in time count by Kristen. We're going to youth focus and then how we can all help with that effort. So.
Hi, thanks everyone. My name is Kirsten London and I'm a program service coordinator and I focus on the YHDP funding. So Kate asked me to come and just do a little update on our efforts. So we have a lot of things happening, or we've expanded our current point in time count surveyors. We're hosting an event at the downtown library. We're not actually allowed to do data in the library, so we will we'll have a couple of surveyors outside completing the surveys, and then we have the Ruth Bascom room set aside where we'll give out incentives. We've been able to supply some gift cards, socks. We're looking for other basic needs still that include propane and hand warmers, chopsticks, other cold weather items that folks who are unhoused possibly want. We're going to have one of our YHDP executive committee members stationed at Youth Errors Drop, who will be doing surveys. Hosea is participating as well as a surveying site. Lane Community College, I don't know if folks know, but all community colleges in the state of Oregon have to help students with basic needs. I know that Lane is also offering rental assistance and have some staff really dedicated to helping students who are minimally and unhoused out there. So we're going to have a surveyor out there. Looking Glass is providing outreach and has a really good outreach areas identified. I think I remember seeing 3 different outreach efforts that they have planned for that day. And then the 4J outreach staff are also going to be conducting surveys with students that they find as they are out and about looking. We are surveying folks who are under the age of 25. It's important to highlight that while we are participating in the formal HUD PIC count that is really looking at that chronic homelessness definition, Lane County has also decided to do an informal youth count that includes the expanded definitions of homelessness that are allowed under YHDP. We're excited to see what this wider net will highlight in terms of numbers and seeing how that impacts kind of our overall data, but only the formal count will be reported to HUD. And then last, but certainly not least, the survey will have a youth specific questions attached to it. So we are excited. That's kind of my update. I'm curious if folks have any questions.
Kirsten, would you be willing to share the youth specific questions?
Sure. Let me pull those up. So there's 1, 2, So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 different questions. We're gonna ask them about their sexuality, how they identify. We have a question. We have a couple questions, one about engagement in foster care, another about detention or jail. Education specific questions that look at last grade completed, where we are because of the YHTP definition of imminent risk of homelessness. We are asking about couch surfing or doubled up, and with who. And then there are questions about where they've stayed in the last 3 months that, include things like apartments, treatment, detox centers, hospitals, living in cars, outside in tents, and other specific questions as well. And then who they would have stayed with in the last 3 months as well. And finally, I forgot to mention this, everything that we've done has been vetted through our YHD executive committee. So our Youth and Young Adult Action Council has voted and helped prescribe the direction that we are going in with our current efforts.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Great, thanks everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. We appreciate you. Okay, wonderful. So we're moving quite quickly for this. It's not a bad thing. Navigation Center update, as well as the Shinklebrook Street Shelter. I don't know who wants to go first. We have both David and Maria here.
Yes, I can give updates on both, and I'll just, if you don't mind passing these around, that would be awesome. I apologize if folks can't see me on the camera there. But David and I would like to give a fairly brief update, as we realize we have about 10 minutes and we want to make sure that you all have time to ask questions. But first and foremost, want to touch on the Schenkel Brooklyn Street Shelter, which is for those of you who may not be familiar, a 12-person shelter. The priority population for that is folks who are higher need in terms of medical and mobility challenges. Entry for that is through coordinated entry, and very similar to the Navigation Center in the entry and referral process. The shelter, unfortunately, although we had an opening event back in October, we were not able to open. We had some administrative challenges and challenges with insurance. However, today is officially the opening date, and David and his team are working on moving people in there now. So that is really exciting. Then also want to just touch on the Navigation Center. We are 4 months in now to after opening. So have been learning a lot over these last 4 months. Just a reminder that the Navigation Center model is very new to our community, a new low barrier shelter model, in addition to a new building and new equitable social solutions being a new provider to our community as well. So learning a lot, lots of new hiring and new staffing and onboarding. So it's been a good journey so far. And David will talk a little bit more about that, but we are nearly 90% full, and did have some challenges initially getting some of the top bunks filled. However, we worked around those challenges. We, for a period of time, opened up to various community providers to be able to provide referrals directly to the center and through coordinated entry, and got folks in there. Also just continuing to build and work on building partnerships. We had a great meeting this morning with IHAC, the Integrated Holistic Aid Collective, who provided services through public health to the COVID mitigation efforts for the unhoused population, and they are interested in providing volunteer services on site and out of the clinic space on at the Navigation Center. So that's exciting. I also know David's had conversations with NAMI about bringing some services on peer support service on site as well. We also have a behavioral health RFP out currently, looking to bring additional peer support services on site to support folks. So just quickly gonna touch on a little bit of data that you all should have in front of you. So Diana, could you go to the first slide there? Thank you. So just want to point out, looking specifically at the age groups that, and this was from, first quarter, so September through December. But nearly half of the folks staying there are above the age of 55. So just, keeping in mind that there is kind of an older group of folks staying there. And then moving on to the second slide, looking at disability. So just recognizing that overwhelming majority of individuals identified as having a disability. And then just taking a glance at slide 3, what we thought was particularly interesting, if you look at the VI SPDAT score by exit data, overall, it shows that majority of the folks staying there are at the higher end of the spectrum for VI SPDAT score. So just in general, it gives us a picture that most of the folks staying are have higher needs, and folks with higher needs often are kind of considered harder to serve in general. So just recognizing that that is the group of folks who are staying at the NAV Center, which I think was the overall goal for us, and identified need for having a low barrier shelter. Just want to point out that although you can see that there certainly have been some exits regarding folks with those higher VI SPDAT scores, there's also a number of people who are staying there, and who I know that David and his team have really been working on developing a culture within the center to really focus on helping people succeed in the program and get through and stay regardless of barriers, and also just kind of painting a picture for folks. It is a congregate setting, which congregate setting in any shelter program is can be a challenging environment. So there's certainly folks who may have acute behavioral health needs, who are in close quarters with folks who may not have acute behavioral health needs. So there's definitely a lot of those things that David's team is working through. And I will leave it at that. David, do you want to take a couple minutes?
I think just want to retouch the part of the SPDAT scores. Our highest percentage of exits are in that higher number range, but also our most successful exits are in that higher range. So what we're trying to do with long-term housing with our residents there, it works across the board. It is more challenging with individuals with higher acute behavioral needs. But again, like Maria stated, if our approach to that trauma-informed care, but person-centered approach, focusing on their strengths, that translates to whatever dynamic people are experiencing in their life, and whatever is there for us to work with, whatever willingness they have to, or ability to work with us, it really comes across in the relationship we develop with them at the center. And I think that's part of the culture that Maria was highlighting, is regardless of the challenges, that we just meet them where they're at, work with them. We'll get the best that we can of this situation. Even if they do end up exiting, at least hopefully they'd have a positive experience receiving services, and that may lay the foundation for future relationships if they come back into the center.
Why don't you introduce yourself and your role?
Oh, okay. I forget. So my name's David. I'm the project director at the center. I have about 22 years experience in social services. Have worked in other various shelters. This is the first low barrier shelter various other shelter programs. And my job is to help people in the team do their job. And so one of the things that we've tried to do is try to communicate and inculcate that culture of meeting people where they're at through all our personnel. From those that have a higher set of skill sets, more experience, all the way to the ones who are kind of new to this type of service. Our own ongoing effort is to help everybody just be prepared and equipped to meet those needs.
Excellent. I have Mayor Van Gordon in the queue.
Thank you. I guess I had a question specific to Schenkel, not necessarily the navigation center. And maybe, I've gotten some Glenwood residents that are sort of reaching out to me, not necessarily about the site itself, but more like neighborhood issues related to the site as far as open flames and, sort of other challenges. Is there been any conversation that has been going on, between the facility and in the neighborhood?
Yeah, if I can answer that one. I had a conversation, I won't mention the name, but I did have a conversation with one of the neighbors today. We had a good opportunity to connect. I think one of the bigger challenges is since we weren't operating, there wasn't really a way for anybody in the community to get in contact with us. So we kind of put our number on the door and talked to the individual and give them our contact info. But we got an opportunity to address those concerns, and he was aware that we're in the building, we're operating, and there were individuals who probably trespassing into the property, and that was resolved. And so he was just happy to meet somebody and be able to have somebody to contact in the future.
Okay, and maybe this is a good offline conversation to have, but maybe we could connect later, right? Just to make sure that, because I think it's part of a broader conversation. I did forward it on to Commissioner Lovell since it's constituent sort of outreach. But I would love to know more so I can help support that conversation a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I see Chris and then Rosie has her hand up.
Hello, David. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris McAllister here, lived experience seat. I just want to first and foremost say thank you for having the closest thing to a shelter in Springfield that we've had in a long time. I know you're still just slightly outside in the unincorporated area. Having done services in that area for a long time, I was just curious, do you have a relationship with Cahoots or an arrangement for them? Because they traditionally cannot go back beyond in that street. And secondarily, how are you working out law enforcement issues? Because the sheriff / Springfield police arrangement doesn't always line up with service calls.
So Chris, thanks for sharing your personal experience with that area. As David mentioned, they're on day one. And so there are still things to work out, and we'll make sure that those conversations that you just suggested occur, and there are coordination available to be able to address whatever may come up in that space.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.
Rosie, did I see your hand up?
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Out of the 33 exits that they had at the navigation center, how many of them got housed?
So
or they went back to the streets, becoming homeless again?
So our most recent data is 12 individuals exited to positive outcomes.
And the rest, they became unhoused again?
They fall under the categorization of negative exits, so that can be of various locations, including homelessness.
So
some of the, I'm just looking back at the data that we had up a minute ago. So of the what we would in HMIS consider negative exits was 4 went back to another emergency shelter, 4 went to stay with friends or family, 2 didn't have an exit interview, and 16 went back to a place not meant for human habitation.
And that's the thing, you know, if we're working with homeless prevention, what are the steps that the navigation center is doing to keep them out of being back of the streets and, you know, being homeless? That's our goal for this board.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate David's point regarding, you know, hoping that they might be interested in coming back at some point. The majority of folks, especially if they, you know, choose to leave and there wasn't a significant behavior challenge, would have an opportunity to come back if they so choose, or to connect with other shelters within the community. But I certainly agree. I mean, that the goal is that if someone goes into any of the shelters in the community, that they would be able to transition into a permanent housing opportunity. And so the other piece too is that those in the navigation center are receiving case management. And part of that case management is understanding, you know, what other connection opportunities are there for the individuals so that they're able to stabilize and be able to kind of move on to a housing program that will keep them out of emergency shelter long term.
The question was for David. Thank you for answering. The thing is that if we're in this wonderful committee or board, I just would like to see more good outcomes out of this, even though this is homelessness. The numbers that we have here in the county, they're outrageous. Perhaps that we need to change those steps and be more proactive in providing those mental health services or that advocacy for them, so to prevent them from being unhoused again.
I can't say that in regards to those. I'm just going to kind of touch on what Kate mentioned because it's kind of relevant to the numbers that you're seeing there. The individuals that get exited, usually the service that is provided to provide that support is the case management, the case plan, the housing stability plan. And that is the document that we use to guide and drive services. So everything that's geared towards their ultimate exit of the program is captured in that document. Usually when we have somebody exit and that it's not in line with that exit plan or that housing stability plan, it usually is some type of acute behavioral issue that revolves around unsafe behavior. And at that point, their exit, unfortunately, isn't a long-term plan because we don't necessarily plan exits around acute behavioral issues or violence or aggression. And it would actually be inappropriate for us to have a conversation with somebody before they got there and try to develop strategies on how we would successfully exit somebody if they had emotional dysregulation or if they had acute behavioral need. So it's part of kind of meeting people where they're at. That's part of the journey. That's part of the struggle, is that even though we don't want to see anybody unhoused and we work with people on a daily basis, sometimes, I've told Maria, sometimes I'll sit there with an individual for hours to help them get back to a place where they can remain in the center overnight because they're experiencing some type of mental health symptom. You know, we don't want to see them exit, but at the same time, meeting people where they're at sometimes means that things are out of our control. And that is part of the empowerment that we give people, is that when things happen, we kind of have to follow that process. And sometimes that means that at that point in time, someone might have to leave the center. And again, hopefully the experience they had there and the service they received and the relationships they built with the staff can lay a foundation for them to come back into the center again. Our hope is that anybody that, in order to keep themselves and others safe, have to be exited, that hopefully isn't going to be a situation where they can come back in. Many times, you know, it's not just substance abuse, it's just ongoing mental health needs. But again, things that are out of our control. We do have, with every individual in the center, that housing stability plan, which is meant to guide their ultimate exit. But again, if you're going to do a person-centered approach, a lot of that power remains with the individual in the center. And that's how you kind of maintain a respectful, collaborative relationship. And sometimes it means that we see numbers that we don't want to see. But as long as I think we're doing our due diligence and actively providing the services as promised, I think that we're going to ultimately reach our goals and make a strong impact in the community.
I have a question. Can you remind us, I know back in very early conversations about the navigation center as part of the shelter feasibility study, et cetera, there was like a time limited amount or a time limitation on the people within the navigation center staying there. Is that still in place, or what is our goal for that?
So there was a 90-day timeframe stated to try to get people housed, but our approach is not to exit anybody if they don't meet that benchmark. Ultimately, that's the goal, is to keep people off the streets. So we have residents there who are past the 90-day mark, and we're still continuing to work with them to try to find housing. The biggest challenge, aside from individuals getting to that point where they are housing ready, is actual available housing.
Yeah.
So for us to exit individuals with those particular type of barriers, would just kind of, create the same issue again.
Yeah.
So people stay.
Is that something that we can be tracking to see how many people are there past that 90-day mark to kind of measure our success? And
Yeah.
that, I know it was an initial goal, that's how long, best practice for a navigation center like this is for a community. It would be really interesting to see, knowing there's a lot of factors, right? It's not to place blame, but really to see and highlight as a community, our goal is 90 days, but the reality is it takes 6 months for somebody in this town to find housing because it's so sparse.
Also, would they lose their voucher if they exited? That's another thing. Do they have to reapply for a voucher to be back into the navigation center or to any of the shelters? Because they're already part of the HMIS. But, if they have a voucher and they were exited from the navigation or any other of the shelters, with those people, did they lose their vouchers to get housing?
They would not, no. Often what leads to vouchers being lost, unfortunately, is the time limit that's placed upon folks. If we're talking about, Section 8 vouchers or emergency housing vouchers, for example. But no, it's not tied to emergency shelter stay or anything like that.
Because a lot of the people that go through shelters, they have that housing voucher for, wait on that waiting list. And then they found a place like the navigation center or another place. And then the 90 days is up and that wasn't renewed. I wonder, what's the procedure to educate them and let them know that they have so much time, or who's helping them extend that time about the 90 days or the date issue and the day to use the voucher, the expiration date, you have until this time. And if you don't find housing in either the navigation or somewhere else, is someone helping them extend that time? And if they're, and also are they educating their population that they're applying or they're staying or they're housing, are they educating them that, this is what it is, this is what we can do for you, but if you need more time, we can do this for you? Is there, because I have heard it from some of the clients that we have, that a lot of those things, a lot of those issues, they haven't been explained correctly or they don't understand. Someone doing it.
So I can't speak for other locations, but for the Nav Center, the way they're set up is our supervisors will make a list and they track individuals with current vouchers, and it's their responsibility to touch base with their case managers during their supervision, and then they will go ahead and meet with their clients and keep them updated as far, or touch base with them and kind of plan ahead for those expiration dates so they can reapply and renew and make sure there's no lapse in the vouchers. So it isn't part of the case management process that we've kind of developed to make sure that we don't have those lapses, because again, the voucher is everyone gets excited when they get a client with a voucher, but the hurdle isn't the voucher. Sometimes it's the actual housing availability. And so many times what we're trying to do is not only just track the progress of available housing, but if we do have somebody with a voucher that has acute behavioral needs or ongoing substance use, need for substance abuse support, trying to help them be successful while they're there until an opportunity comes up. That's part of the the challenge and also the purpose of a located shelter is to help individuals who may otherwise not be successful in a different framework. They can be successful with us. And again, sometimes not the intent, but sometimes it is just a waiting game and making sure that the residents can be there successfully. Yeah.
I think we should have a tracking, not only from navigation or people who are handling these things. And I'm talking about vouchers. How many people have been educated in how to maintain that voucher and keep it active?
Well, and to that point, just even an opportunity to understand who has the voucher, who has vouchers in our system. And so that, that's something that we don't know at this point. And so, opportunities around that coordination as well. And at some point, we can certainly speak further with Homes for Good, who is the entity that manages the vast majority of vouchers in the community.
And
So
I
our
think
current HMIS doesn't track if someone is in the system and has an active housing voucher.
No, we don't have access to that.
No, but I think if we can provide kind of like a cheat sheet and for them to have and to be aware, because sometimes the agency that is like the navigation that is providing them shelter, and then they don't follow that, then the center that is providing them that help and it lapses, it gets a bad or a negative ding on that center, and the center, it's not their obligation. Is that correct, David? It's something that they can help, you're there to help them, but if you don't know it, the case management won't be able to know it. I'm just bringing up those things because I working with veterans and seeing them, they've been on house, some of those issues or education or tips may come handy, not just for the people that we serve, but the people that are in our community, that they can be helped by having a little cheat sheet, say, this is what you need to be aware of. This is your voucher will end up in here. Be sure to talk to your case manager about this before they get blamed. Agencies will get blamed for something that they did.
So, that's a great point. So I'm just going to reiterate one of the three approaches that we use at the center. It is a strength-based approach, a person-centered approach, and then also a strength-based, I should say, approach. And part of that service model is to highlight the things that the person brings to the table, not just skill sets, but resources. And so it would be in line with our way of doing business and providing case management to track any vouchers or any type of housing opportunities that they have. And so we do track those, and that is part of the ongoing case management. It would not be good use of our time to try to reinvent the wheel if they have a source already. So we do take advantage of that. And, again, it's part of the conversation with the individual when they're at the center. And most of the time, actually all the time, everybody wants to take advantage of that voucher. So it would be best practice to follow through with those opportunities that are there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rosie. Pat.
And, Rosie, this is Pat. I serve currently on the Homes for Good board also. And the question that you asked may be one that we could direct toward Homes for Good as well, because as Carly said, the vast majority of the people who have vouchers are probably on the waiting list at Homes for Good. So there's more of a regular means of contact with a larger number of people through Homes for Good. So I'll pass that along, Rosie. Thank you.
Okay. Perhaps you and I, we can talk about it, Pat.
Wonderful. Any other final questions for Maria or David? Wonderful. Thanks for the update. This is obviously something new and big for our community, and being the person to start something new and big is not easy. So I think we all have grace and appreciation for what you're doing. So thank you. Chris, did I miss your hand?
Yes, ma'am. I just wanted to ask a question to David, just real briefly. What is one thing that you could use support in to as you roll out from the community? And I guess as a follow-up, what is something that you're excited about as you move forward? I yield.
I think the greatest thing that we could probably use, and Maria's been, and the county has been really great about working with us, is increasing the number of various third-party services that are done on site, whether it be well checkup, dental, things like that. Those types of services, the more we can bring that on site, the better it is for the residents. Taking care of those basic care needs could just kind of help people focus on more of the higher functioning activities like the case management. So the more people we get on site that can provide these services for residents, the better it is for them. So I think that would be a great help. As far as excitement, I think the fact that we're just up and going, kind of seeing how the machine starts working more effectively, more efficiently, and people get to be helped in finding that long-term housing. I think that's ultimately what we're here to do. So that's pretty exciting.
Excellent. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, we have a community needs assessment update from Brianna.
Hi, thank you, Chair. My name is Brianna Rogers. I'm a program services coordinator with Lane County, and I work with homelessness prevention and anti-poverty programs and contracts. And I'm also the community action staff lead for Lane County. And as a community action agency, we as Lane County are required to complete a community needs assessment every 3 years. It's a full survey and assessment in order to identify needs and gaps in our services for low-income individuals, and that's in our services throughout all of Lane County. And then this assessment is a guide to help, is used to guide the strategic plan and identifies where we should be focusing our funding and other supports and opportunities. The last one was completed in 2019, so we are a bit overdue by about 6 months to a year due to key staff turnover. So the current one, we are aiming and hoping to have that done and final in the fall of 2023, so the fall of this year. And we're hoping to get the survey out by March and April to gather responses and get the community assessment together and out to folks. So I am here to ask to put together an ad hoc committee from the PHB, and we are looking for about 5 members to do that, who will help guide the survey and the assessment itself, along with myself and housing staff, to just guide the process and make sure it's equitable and surveying exactly what we want from the community in order to really make it robust and a good guide for the strategic plan and the services. So if you all want to volunteer now, think about it, send me an email. I can put my contact information in the chat, whatever works.
Can you give any information about timing and like what the expectations would be of that committee?
I am still putting some of that together. I have a timeline for kind of drafts and things. So like I said, I'm hoping to get the survey out March and April to allow for as much time as possible. That survey is going to be going out to community members, low-income individuals, clients, consumers of the services, and then also community partners, agencies, education partners, elected official, everyone. So I want to have plenty of time for that to go out. So between now and March, so end of January and then into February, whether that's meetings or emails, it might be a mixture of both, and getting some feedback from the ad hoc committee. It might be 2 or 3 meetings between now and then, and just emails back and forth. And then once the survey comes back, again, if all goes well, in May, putting that together with the assessment. So May to August would be some meetings in there, maybe once a month, once every couple weeks, probably more like once a month, and then emails in between, just to look at, are we on the right track, and is this kind of where we would like to go with the assessment and the survey results. I don't know if that was specific enough.
Yeah, helpful. Thank you.
A question, Chair. Brianna, are you putting out the request for volunteers to the entire board as well?
My concern.
As well as we're just the executive committee here.
I might look to Kate for that question.
Yes, the full board.
Yes. Okay.
That's probably easier pickings, I think, on the full board.
Yeah, that was my concern. It was
Yeah.
timing of not having this announcement for the full board.
Right.
So maybe an email out to the full board asking if people are interested.
Yeah, we'll send a follow-up.
Perfect.
Yeah, we, because in a normal year and situation, I would have had a lot more time to prepare for this. And with the timing of these meetings, we just wanted to get this out there as soon as possible. But yes, the full board sounds like would be best.
Thank you.
Chris?
So,
Sorry, am I allowed to call him Chris?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I was just curious about, in terms of membership and knowing that the timeline is so needed so quickly, are we extending to the subcommittees on the board as well, or are we looking for just voting or ex officio PHB members for this, or their community involvement as well, outside people being on this body?
That question was to me, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think right now we're just looking at the full PHB board for the ad hoc committee. I do plan to piece together some community members, doing some individual outreach to make sure the survey at least is ready for the general public. And then of course the survey will go out once it's ready. We'll go out to all of the committees, but for the ad hoc committee itself, I'm just right now looking at the main PHB full board.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to create the ad hoc committee, or is it I don't actually know.
I don't
If
think
bylaws indicate if we have to
Yeah,
have a vote.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Actually, let's be safe. Can I get a motion to create an ad hoc committee?
Chair Quick Warner, I move to that the Poverty and Homelessness Board respond to Brianna Rogers' request for to form an ad hoc committee surrounding the community needs assessment.
Okay.
I
There's
second that
Second.
motion.
Okay. Perfect. Just in case we go back in the bylaws.
Thank you.
I'd rather get it safe now. Okay, and then Kate, you'll send a note to the full committee to solicit volunteers?
Yeah,
Okay.
Brianna will.
Or
Yes.
Brianna, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Great.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
We're gonna vote on that.
Oh, a motion. Are those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Wonderful. That's right. Okay, we have February all meeting draft agenda. Any kind of, I guess, discussion, Kate, or you want to walk us through it?
Yeah, if I may. So one of the primary focus areas of the executive committee, based on the charter, is to set forth the agenda for the future all-member meeting. And so that's why you've seen the draft agenda in the last few executive committee member meeting agendas. And so what's been discussed for the February meeting include an opportunity to have a hot topic, particularly one where there might be questions and discussions. And of course, the governor's emergency declaration due to homelessness is indeed a hot topic. And my hope is that by the February all-member meeting, we will know much more. Major questions for me is, what dollars are available and what can those dollars be used
I have
to support, and how might we go about understanding how agencies can access those dollars, and lots of questions that need to be answered. So we'll bring that to the February meeting based on what we understand. We also, many of you are aware that we're part of Built for Zero, which is a national effort to really focus on being data-driven in our work to reduce the number of people who are experiencing homelessness. We have a Tableau dashboard that illustrates the inflow and the outflow of people within our overall system of houseless programs, and a by name list. Built for Zero received an enormous grant recently that allowed them to expand their services that they provided. And they decided that they were going to focus on prevention assistance, which basically means the assistance provided to people who have not yet experienced homelessness. So those who are renting a unit, those who might be doubled up or couch surfing. And we have an amazing group of providers, Catholic Community Services, Siusla Outreach Services, as well as Laurel Hill Center, who are joining some of the Lane County staff to start talking about how do we do this in a more coordinated and collaborative way? And how do we collectively prioritize those for prevention assistance who are most likely to experience homelessness if they don't get any assistance? So there's been some really good conversations, and we'll bring you up to speed and let you know how to get involved if you're interested. We also have Carly, who will be talking about the LSA, which is upload of data that needs to happen every year to HUD. And it's an enormous effort, but does lead to some positive opportunities to analyze data. And so she's going to bring an analysis to us. We've been talking about how we're going to embark on a reimagining process for the Poverty and Homelessness Board and for the Human Services Council. And that is starting this month with one-on-one conversations with key, particularly PHB and HSC members, as well as a survey to engage the broader community. And so I'll give you an update on that work. And then also the continuum of care application, it comes around almost every year. And so Amanda has been planning out what our work is for this next year. And we will be starting the continuum of care programs assessment process. And then we have our strategic plan for this year, and we'll be giving an update on what's been done in this last quarter. And then lastly, some things to vote on for the PHB. So this is always subject to change thanks to our amazing chairs, but this is a good start, definitely for the next all-member meeting.
Yeah, and I would just add some flavor to that. One thing that we're from the chairs and then hopefully broader to the executive committee, one thing we're trying to accomplish is creating a better sort of big picture view of what the Poverty and Homelessness Board is doing for this next year, and then ultimately what our role is. And so we spent some time looking at the list of items that, because we are the governing body of the COC and the Community Action Agency, these are just a list of things that we have to do. The things that HUD requires that, that staff bring to us, the things that we have to approve, that we have to engage in. So we have that component. And then where are the areas that we want to engage in further to develop and to provide opportunity for more community discussion and engagement. And then ultimately, how are we making sure that every single month, maybe it's not in our meeting agenda every time, but how are we tracking on our strategic plan to make sure the things that we said we wanted to get done this year, we're actually looking at that plan and it's not, in a file in Kate's drawer somewhere in her office, but that it's constantly in front of us, really challenging us to make sure that we're focused on those things we said we want to be focused on. So we're hoping to incorporate some of these things throughout the meetings over the next year that are kind of consistent and we can all expect. So you guys just have a better way to connect the dots. Wonderful. Okay. Is there a public comment in the exec committees too, or just in the full board meeting?
Just in the full
Okay,
board.
great. Wonderful. So wrap up, our next meeting is a full board meeting. So we will be in person at Harris Hall. We'll still have a virtual option, so it'll be hybrid. Would love to see you in person if you're able though. That's on February 16th, and then March 16th is the next executive committee meeting. And in between those, we will be getting at least one email from Brianna with a request for folks for that ad hoc committee and perhaps some other follow-up. I know in the chat there were some follow-up items that Mayor Van Gordon was hoping to get follow-up on, so hopefully we can track back on those. All right, any final comments, questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to say thank you for taking on the leadership role for this upcoming year. And I'd like to acknowledge that your leadership is opening up doors with the Business Leader Task Force along with your team. And so thank you for taking on this next, the next big thing. And also thanks to David and staff for opening up the newest shelter. Every bed matters and every head has a place to lay with the way that we're trying to plan. So thank you again.
Thanks, Chris. That was kind. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.